Warning. You are entering a restricted area. Return to where you came from, or be destroyed.
You're heading your way towards the useless nerdy knowledge. Please do not go any further. If you will not comply, you will hear a nerd rambling.
Nerd alert!
Get those nerds! Nerd! 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 Exterminate!
Go ahead, make my day.
Bazinga!
I'll be back.
Greetings, fellow podcast listeners. Welcome to another episode of Useless Nerdy Knowledge. I'm your host, Ben, and here I'm going to be talking about the probably the most anticipated film of this year, Deadpool and Wolverine. So I didn't want to, obviously talk about this, but it's like, where would I begin? When I start talking about the movie, because there's like so much like backstory about it and all that. I feel like I should just like lightly touch upon the original X-Men movies first. Obviously, like the first X-Men movie that came out was in like 2000, as of this year, from this year, 2024. That came out 24 years ago, which is super hard to believe, but apparently it happened. And I think the movie is still pretty good. It like holds the source material pretty well, and obviously the casting's really good. Like Halle Berry as Storm is really cool, and obviously for Patrick Stewart to be Professor X was awesome, and of course, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is by far probably one of the best castings since, later for, Robert Downey Jr. to be Iron Man. I mean, it was a pretty good choice. I feel like it's just, it's one of those like things like it was like, a match made in heaven, and one of those things where he's basically irreplaceable. It just makes sense, And then, of course, obviously, with that having so much success, after that came, like Spider-Man, there was a sequel for X-Men, and all these other Marvel movies. So I feel like X-Men was truly the movie that, like, definitely got the Marvel movies in the 2000s, like, a good kick. Like, X-Men, it did something like that. I don't know. But, 20th Century Fox, had the rights to it, so they just, like, kept pumping movies after movies. But, of course, after X3, it started doing other X-Men related movies, some that had Hugh Jackman in them, a couple didn't, and I'll be honest, I have not watched all of them, mainly because, the recasting and all the other X-Men movies just started going downhill. It was getting really, really crappy and pretty lame, to be honest, and I can't even keep track of how the timeline goes, and it doesn't help when all the, the cast members keep getting recasted and such, so it's just like, I don't know how to describe it, but I haven't seen Days of Future Past. I haven't seen The Wolverine. I've seen X-Men Origins Wolverine, but everybody agrees that it's a big pile of what that we really don't want to talk about. However, it did technically debut Ryan Reynolds' role of playing Wade Wilson, but with this version of Deadpool, it was pretty much frowned upon and definitely did not stick to the source material because, yeah, a guy with long blades who has his mouth sewed and who can teleport and shoot laser beams. Yeah, that's totally Deadpool from the comics. But I guess that's what happens when you get one of the writers of Transformers to make this movie. So yeah, I've seen Dark Phoenix. I really didn't care for it, and I haven't seen any of the other X-Men related movies, to be honest, like Apocalypse and all that stuff. They're probably okay, but again, it's just one of those things where it's like, after X3, it just doesn't have my interest, because like if you keep recasting all the different people, don't bring people back except for Hugh Jackman, it just doesn't have the same magic. I don't know. But of course, after X-Men Origins Wolverine and with Ryan Reynolds debuting as Deadpool, everyone was disappointed because, well, it wasn't the Deadpool from the comics. So thankfully, in 2016, we got Deadpool, which was a huge hit. I remember seeing it in the theater when I was young, but it was absolutely awesome. It was exactly what Deadpool was. It was perfect. I think it still holds up to this day. It's hilarious. It's great. It's action-packed. It's really good. And for Deadpool, he's just one of those like anti-heroes or just super mutant Marvel characters that's just like took the world by storm after this movie came out. Like, he's been known for some stuff for quite a while. He made his debut in the 90s and, in some X-Men related comics and all that stuff. He's been in a couple of video games and cartoons and such. But with this movie, it just made sense for it to exist. You know what I mean? And if I'm being honest, it's perfect for Ryan Reynolds to, be casted as Deadpool, because I believe it was, I forget from which Deadpool related comic, but literally Deadpool in the comic mentioned something about Ryan Reynolds, and that basically sparked the idea of Ryan Reynolds playing Deadpool. And honestly, no one else could have done it better except for him. It just made sense. Again, it was one of those things where he was also born to play that role. So of course with Deadpool, he obviously makes fun of certain Marvel properties. He breaks the fourth wall, and of course in the movie he makes fun of the X-Men, especially Wolverine, and all that. So it's absolutely great. The sequel came out, I believe, 2 years later. It was in 2018, yeah. And it's, in my opinion, I don't think it's as good as the first. It's still fun to watch, but I don't know. For me, and I've probably mentioned this, in my previous episodes before, where it kind of suffered through what I call Alien 3 syndrome, where it's you eliminate this one character that was kind of the whole center point or plot, focus plot thing of, I apologize, words are hard, but anyway, basically it's you focus on this one character from the previous movie, but then you just kill them off, and that's basically, it's if you take Aliens, and then you look at Alien 3, they killed off all the characters that you cared about. And then you just leave one character left in the sequel, and that's about it. That's why I call it Alien 3 syndrome, because a lot of movies suffer from that. Especially Terminator Dark Fate, where it, spoiler alert, killed off John Connor. So it's after Terminator 1 and 2, all those movies, it's the movie just spat you in the face of it. For the longest time, Deadpool 2 kind of did that, but I guess when we see the trailers for Deadpool and Wolverine, and of course when we see the movie, we see that all of Deadpool's friends are alive, including Vanessa. So we assume that there was, if you saw the post-credit scene to Deadpool 2, where Deadpool uses Cable's time machine thing, he, I guess, retcons, retroactive continuity, I don't know how you would say that, basically erases everything, so it's the events of Deadpool 2 happened, but also didn't happen. I don't know. It's really hard to describe, but I guess it's it didn't happen or something. I don't know, but whatever. It doesn't entirely matter, I guess. But of course, after Deadpool 2 came out, people, Deadpool 3 was just up in the air for the longest time, being well, when's it going to happen? Will it happen? And a couple of years ago, or sometime. It wasn't that long ago that eventually Disney, as if they haven't bought everything in the world already, bought the rights to friggin' 20th Century Fox, calling it 20th Century Studios, which, if I'm being honest, I hate it. I don't know why, but it just makes more sense when it's called 20th Century Fox, when it's been like that for so many years, and then you change it to Studios. It's well, we know it's a studio, but now we can't call it Fox for short, but whatever. Anyway, but, I'm assuming that just because of that, either ideas or scripts or whatever were on halt or scrapped or whatever. So pretty much Deadpool's fate was just up in the air. And people were thinking well, now that they own the property to the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Daredevil, all these other different things that, 20th Century Fox owned Marvel property-wise and stuff. So it's well, will they be part of this Marvel Cinematic Universe and such? And that was the other thing, is that in the recent couple of years, the so-called MCU Phase 4 has been at a bit of a downslope. So many movies and shows have just been there's been too many to count. You can't keep them in order, and lots of them were at the lowest quality and just complete. I don't know how to describe it without dividing too many people, but it just hit at a very low point. Very, very bad writing, or just things that people didn't agree on. All that stuff. It's there were some good things, a couple good enough shows and movies, but it's stuff like She-Hulk, which was something that I looked forward to. Just the writing in that was so horrible, and then other things that failed and nobody talks about, like Echo, Hawkeye, The Eternals, Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. That one stank very bad. But I heard that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was good and all that, but it's just that with all these movies, and even the Marvels, lots of people just downright hate it. And there's reasons for it, but I don't want to get into controversial territory at this moment. I just, I don't know. I don't know if I'm exactly comfortable about talking about it on my show yet, but if that ever happens, then it'll happen. I don't care. But, obviously with Deadpool, it was like, his fate was up in the air because, it made sense for Deadpool to have an R rating because it's like, that's who the character was in the comics. He was a brutal, vulgar, edgy type of anti-mutant hero. So it just made sense for his movies to be R-rated. And, technically he had a more PG-13 cut of Deadpool 2 called Once Upon a Deadpool. People kind of wish that didn't exist, just like the Star Wars Holiday Special. But anyway, eventually, once Disney bought the rights to 20th Century Fox, changed it to studios, now they have the rights to all the X-Men stuff and all that. So now they were like deciding on, well, would they make an R-rated Deadpool sequel? And, well, apparently they did. So now I guess it's just up in the air, or however you want to describe it, that supposedly all the other previous X-Men 20th Century Fox movies are supposedly canon, depending on it. I don't know. Again, the timelines are confusing. I haven't kept up with it. I haven't done my research, so I have like no idea what to think about it. But obviously, with Deadpool and Wolverine, as soon as like the teaser came out with like, Ryan Reynolds wanting Hugh Jackman to be Wolverine for one more time, everybody was psyched. Once we saw the teaser come out, everybody was hyped. And then once we saw more trailers and more merchandise, with like the popcorn buckets and stuff, everybody flipped out. Everybody was so excited for this, and including myself. Obviously, I was, at the time, I was more anticipated for Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, and only slightly anticipated for Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. But me being a huge Godzilla fan, it makes sense for me to be hyped up for another Godzilla Kong sequel. But then it's like, as soon as Deadpool and Wolverine came out, everybody just like loved it because they were all excited for it because Hugh Jackman would be coming back for Wolverine one more time. Maybe, we'll see. But of course, his last film, Logan, which I did, when I first watched Logan on DVD, I didn't get to see it in theaters. But when I got it on DVD, I heard lots of people said it was good. When I first watched it, I want to say probably when it released back in 2017 or somewhere around that time, I didn't care for it much. I'm the kind of person who isn't much of a drama watching person, but after rewatching it just to see Deadpool and Wolverine, my mind was made up and I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty decent. Again, with not seeing a whole lot of or all of the X-Men movies, I thought this one was pretty alright. But it was one of those things where this movie, along with Deadpool 1 and 2, was also important to see if you wanted to see Deadpool and Wolverine. I guess it's just one of those, like, timeline things where you need to keep up in order to get certain references or plot or ideas and all that stuff. So yeah. Anyway, with Deadpool and Wolverine, obviously everybody, including myself, was hyped up. I was ready. When I went to the movie theater, I dressed up as Deadpool. My friend and I, we were dressed up. He was dressed up as Wolverine. It was a blast. So we were all ready for this. We were ready. We were really in. I was just like absolutely hyped up. And before I do like slightly talk about the movie, I'll do my best try not to spoil a whole bunch. But it is just another one of those things of like, many people were determining, will this save the MCU? Highly doubtful, but we'll see. If they make up, if they get their mind in the right place and stuff, then like, if they like, stop making crap writing, good directors and all that stuff, maybe they could go back to the way things were. But I feel like it's just another one of those unfortunate things where people are kind of tired of, superhero movies. Like after DC, EU kind of, basically flopped because like, it's just even those were just not exactly going anywhere. It was kind of rushed when it was in between, Captain America: Civil War and all that stuff when they had Batman versus Superman. They saw that Marvel's success was going high and they were just all like, oh, we need to hurry up and get this stuff out of here. All this stuff was rushed and all that. But it was just another one of those things of like, yeah, it's not working too well. But then after Endgame came out, Marvel was just all like, well, let's do the whole multiverse thing. Like, it was a cool idea at first, but now it's just one of those things where it's like, and a lot of people pointed this out too, and even like certain directors and stuff, where it's just basically lazy writing, death of storytelling, yada yada. Now, it can work to a point, and with Spider-Man: No Way Home, I thought it worked pretty well. It was fun to see. It was just another one of those things where I think it was a good movie for it to come out during the whole, 2020 being 2020 type of thing. You know what I mean? But again, it is one of those things where it's like many people were like basically saying that, the whole multiverse idea is just nothing but lazy writing. South Park kind of made fun of that idea. But it is kind of, interesting to point out because, with the whole multiverse thing, you bring back certain actors or all these other different people that come back from different things. Like, if you take Spider-Man No Way Home or even the Flash movie, it's basically what a lot of people refer to as nostalgia bait, where they bring back, old actors and, who played previous characters, being like, hey, remember Michael Keaton? He played as Batman, remember? Look, you remember that. You got to see the movie. Okay, give us your money. That kind of makes sense. Basically, nostalgia bait is just one of those things that works depending on what it is exactly. I mean, Spider-Man worked because, people love Spider-Man, and a lot of people have nostalgia for both, the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, and that was the main reason why a lot of people wanted to go and see it. It was one of those nostalgia bait movies that worked. And with, The Flash, from what I heard, it didn't do so well at the box office, but once again, it was one of those movies that was basically nostalgia bait to basically get you to see it. And even a lot of other movies have kind of done that, like Star Wars and Ghostbusters, they've done that too, where it's like, hey, look, the old actors are back. They're old as crap, but they're back. So, yeah, I guess it's just another one of those, like, debatable topics of, like, nostalgia bait, lazy multiverse writing, and all that stuff. But I don't know. But we'll just see how it goes. I really hope that, like, eventually this, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, like, I think it's had its fair share of success. I think they just need to, like, tone it down a bit. Like, maybe, like, 1 or 2 movies a year would be fine, but it's just, like, all these shows just spread apart all over Disney Plus and stuff. It's just, like, all over the place, and, like, people just can't keep up. Like, there's probably some good stuff out there, like Loki and all that stuff, but even the movie itself, like, mentions that, like, oh, from this show and this show, Deadpool points that out, fourth wall breaking in a way, but it's like, oh, so that's what that's from, because I've never even seen Loki, and I'm just like, I don't know, I didn't have any interest in seeing, like, don't get me wrong, Tom Hiddleston's perfect as Loki, but I just had no interest in seeing it, and it's like how I even tried watching, like, Falcon the Winter Soldier, super boring. WandaVision was okay, Moon Knight was okay, but again, it's like, well, which order am I supposed to watch them in? But again, I don't have a Disney Plus subscription, so how would I know? And again, with She-Hulk, that was a show I looked forward to because I love the She-Hulk character, but it's like at the end, they had no idea what to do with her, and just the quality in movies and stuff was just getting so just horrible and terrible, bad writing, bad scripts, bad acting, bad characters, bad this, bad that, and like overhyped budgets, like the over like 200 million, and then not getting as much as the expected gross or something like that. You know what I mean? But with this movie, it seems to be doing like successful. I mean, with Wolverine and Deadpool, it's a match made in heaven, to be honest. I mean, Deadpool's popular, Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine, it just makes sense. So, the best way I can describe this movie is that I really enjoyed it. Like, in the theaters, absolutely liked it. And the other interesting thing is that it did have some dramatic moments, which, surprisingly, I didn't mind too much. It starts off a bit slow. Like, it gets a bit slow to get going. Like, it's not like the previous Deadpool movies where it has, like, instant humor right there. I mean, even the first Deadpool had a couple serious moments, and even the second one had a couple as well. But I think, like, its beginning part kind of takes a little bit to get going. And then towards the middle and even towards the end, it's where it gets really good. There's some really good references, Easter eggs and stuff in there, and when you see the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but it was just absolutely amazing. I think that, like, with Ryan and Hugh, it was definitely something that worked out pretty well. It reminds me so much of, like, the buddy cop movies, of, like, Lethal Weapon, or even like Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it's like the two guys, like, they have like only two small things in common, and like they're complete opposites, like polar opposites. It's like the Odd Couple if they were, and they just, like, it works out because, like, they don't get along at all, and yet they still have to work together. It's like one of those things that, like, it's definitely like one of those things that definitely had to happen, and we're all grateful that it did. Now, it does beg the question, like, what will happen next? Will, Wolverine meet these characters? Will Deadpool ever meet Spider-Man? Will Wolverine meet the Hulk, like in his first appearance and all that stuff? But we don't really know. Again, it's just one of those things where now it's up in the air, because I guess Deadpool is now part of the MCU, and it's also interesting, too, because, like, you figured that the whole MCU franchise would remain in a PG-13 area, but with Ryan Reynolds, with the whatever Canadian magic he has, he managed to get Disney to basically keep Deadpool at an R rating, which, makes sense. So now it's just another one of those things, kind of like of how the DCEU, for a little bit, had a couple of R-rated movies as well. Like, obviously it started off as PG-13 movies, but then once Shazam came out, that was PG-13. But then immediately after Shazam came Birds of Prey, I believe, which was rated R. Then a couple movies later came The Suicide Squad, that was also rated R. Then after that, I believe it was like Wonder Woman 1984, and then The Flash. Those two were PG-13. So, for any little kid that's like 13 or something like that, not able to see those movies, they're going to get either lost or just, missing out on stuff. So, I don't know. It just, for me, it makes more sense to when the MCU is just PG-13. That way it's more of a family-friendly type of thing in a way. But with Deadpool, I don't know. It's just hard to determine, too. Because it's like, well, now do we keep the other movies canon? Like, obviously, the first couple Deadpool movies now have to be canon, part of the MCU. But it's like, well, what about the other X-Men movies? What about, like, the Fantastic Four movies, that were made in the 2000s? Or, Daredevil? Like, which ones are canon? Like, probably not the one with Ben Affleck and all that, but it's like, would the Netflix shows be canon? Would the Punisher, which Punisher would be canon? It's just one of those multiverse things where it's like, where it gets really confusing, and that's where I'm kind of scared about that, because it's like, well, what are they going to do with it, and will it even work out? Thankfully, this was a movie that worked out. It didn't, pander to anything too much. It didn't, provoke anything. It just, it basically, had a good time with it. Like, you laughed at it, you enjoyed the action, you enjoyed all the weird chaos that was going on. Now, it's not a masterpiece, it's not a perfect film, but it's enjoyable enough where it's one of those films where you just need to turn your brain off and watch it. Just like with Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, it's one of those, idiotic movies that you just needed to enjoy and watch. This is definitely, one of those movies that was for Marvel fan appreciation. I guess it is, another one of those nostalgia bait movies, and yeah, it got me, but honestly, this was something we've all been waiting for this, and I think it's something we've looked forward to. Again, I did my absolute best trying not to spoil it. There's so much in there that you would literally need to see it for yourself. Even the trailers, they spoil just a tiny bit, but it's just like, well, what can I even reveal? But regardless of that, I think I enjoyed it. Now, the only other question is, was this better than the first or second one? I'm not really sure. The first one, I still like. I really do. Second one, not as much as the first, but I still enjoyed it. But with the third one, it's really hard to determine, to be honest. Maybe it would, slightly snuggle up next to the first one. Just, ever so slightly. Just a gentle snuggle or something. I don't know. But I definitely enjoyed this movie. I really hope that I'll be able to get it on DVD. But again, it's just with the quality in movies like Thor: Love and Thunder, She-Hulk, The Eternals, Quantumania, all these movies and shows that are coming out, the shows that nobody talks about, like Hawkeye and Echo, nobody talks about those shows at all. And it's supposedly part of the MCU, but there's not going to be a second season because nobody watches it. But it's just one of those things of well, do we need to watch it in order to catch up with all these other different things? But it's the timelines are going to be confusing, everybody's going to be lost, and even when, it's also one of those things where it's if you saw Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and you didn't watch WandaVision, you'd be kind of confused and lost when you see Wanda. But it's one of those things where it's well, if you saw WandaVision, then you'll be all caught up, nothing to worry about. But not everybody has a Disney Plus subscription. So it's where do you go from there, I'm a physical media collector, so it just makes sense to have them on DVD, conveniently there. Not everybody has internet. Not everybody can afford a streaming service and all that stuff, which is basically cable now, because so many different properties and movies and shows and stuff are on different things. So it's basically an Easter egg hunt in a way, in a bad, terrible monthly spending way. But anyway, once Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness came out, on DVD and Blu-ray and all that stuff, it's well, WandaVision still didn't come out on Blu-ray, so we had to wait a couple of years for that to happen. Eventually it did. Will She-Hulk ever be on Blu-ray? Very doubtful. But anyway, yeah, this is definitely going to be a huge success. It's already a huge success anyway, so now everything's up in the air now. And the other funny thing is that immediately after I saw the movie, Comic-Con had amazing news. And very shocking news, too, that Robert Downey Jr. would be coming back to the MCU. However, he would be back as Victor Von Doom. Now, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it. Like, it's like my brain has like a mixed opinion, but I'm not exactly sure if my mind is made up, if that makes sense. It's like, it's cool that he's back, but I thought he was done. You know, obviously, you know, done being Iron Man, of course, but it's like, I meant done. So is he going to come back as a different character, same character, or what? I've seen different things where it's like supposedly Tony Stark in a multiverse became Doctor Doom because, you know, metal plate or something like that. So maybe it's like a multiverse thing where Tony Stark became Doctor Doom or something like that. Or maybe he's just going to be Victor Von Doom, just a new Doom. Hopefully they'll be able to actually get him right this time rather than like, you know, the Doctor Doom from the early 2000s Fantastic Four movies where he was not a dictator. He was just another scientist, which is not that great. In the comics, Victor Von Doom was a dictator, had his own land, Doombots, you know, all that stuff. So maybe they'll get it right. There was even like supposedly a trailer leaked from Comic-Con of the Fantastic Four movies where it had like, you know, movie or, you know, comic book accurate looking things and all that stuff. I don't know. So we'll see. If they get their stuff together, and, you know, if the Russo brothers coming back from making the first Avengers movie are coming back to make more Avengers movies, if they get everything right, make good you know, some good writing, good directing, and, you know, not, I don't know how to describe it, but, you know, if they get back on the right trail, then maybe they'll have a chance to have one more good round of MCU movies. But again, it is one of those things where it's like maybe people are just like, after Endgame, it's like people are kind of like done with superhero movies because it's like, after Endgame, the MCU was like, you know, it was perfect. Like, you know, the first 3 phases are good, but then it's like after that, everybody's kind of moved on to other things by then. So it's like, you know, what can you possibly do? Who knows? But anyway, yeah. So with Deadpool and Wolverine, I enjoyed it. I hope to see it again sometime soon. I'll obviously get it on DVD or even Blu-ray or Blu-ray. So hopefully, I think that whatever comes next with these guys, especially Ryan Reynolds and maybe even Hugh Jackman again, hopefully we'll see them in the long run. But again, as for the future of the MCU, it's just currently up in the air. We'll just see how the audience reacts and what they think. But again, with Disney, they've kind of gone down a really bad spiral, like down the drain, and not the shower drain. I mean the toilet drain. So we're just gonna see how that goes. Again, I keep hearing different things, you know, with the whole, you know, this whole year, end of the year is like getting really ugly and confusing. I just really wish that people would just get along a lot better, but I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not a political person. I'm an entertainer, not a, you know, not a freedom fighter, thinker, whatever the hell you want to call it. Anyway, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys thought of this. And hopefully we'll get to see more fourth wall breaking Deadpool. That was so much better than She-Hulk breaking the fourth wall sometime in the future. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.